Week one of the Donald Trump election interference trial is coming to an end, and things are beginning to heat up. We've seen a bunch of potential jurors go through the process of voir dire, where they are asked specific questions to see whether or not they can set their biases aside and whether or not they are fit to be on a jury panel. Now, the other day we saw 7 jurors get seated, but this morning, juror number 2 and juror number 4 asked to be excused after Jesse Water posted a revealing segment on Fox News talking about certain details of these jurors' lives. And Donald Trump then continued to boost that post on his Truth Social account. So we saw juror number 2 ask to be excused. We don't know exactly why juror number 4 asked to be excused, but we can imagine it is for a similar reason. I am joined today by legal analyst Kaivan Shroff. Kaivan, how are you doing today?
Good. Great to be back with you.
So my question for you is this an attempt to intimidate the jurors on this panel?
I think attempt might be generous. I think that this is an out of control defendant. We've seen that Donald Trump cannot control his impulses in any way. Obviously we know that's with women who he just grabs, and also in the courtroom, as we've been seeing, right? The judge already had to admonish him for sort of muttering about a potential juror, saying he wouldn't tolerate that in the courtroom. I certainly think this sort of pressure from the right-wing media sphere has intimidated a lot of these potential jurors and obviously sitting jurors. What's concerning to me is that the level of which it's not just Fox News, we got to be fair here. It's really the mainstream media writ large that is sharing so much detail about these jurors that they're being identified. One of the jurors that was excused said that her family and friends were calling her saying, given what's been reported, are you one of the jurors? And of course she is. So the judge has called for reporters to be, more responsible about that and use common sense, which, hopefully they'll follow. But
Yeah, because we have seen juror lists get leaked in prior Trump cases, and we know that the MAGA fan base is incredibly prone to violence. A personal story, I go to a lot of these Trump rallies, and afterwards, I always get all of these DMs saying, I can't wait to find you at one of these rallies so I can do X or Y to you. Or there was one comment I got that said, I'm glad you use your real name so I can track your family down during the Civil War. It's always the most unhinged stuff I've ever seen, and I think there is a very real risk of this juror list leaking and these people being in genuine danger. You agree, right?
I think absolutely. And we've seen in some of these other cases, judges say to the jurors, make sure you don't, my advice to you, don't tell anyone you were part of this jury. And why? Because they know that these MAGA nut jobs really are violent and after these folks. So, if you're going to threaten a judge, you're certainly willing to threaten a juror. Let's put it that way. And obviously they are threatening the judge. They are threatening the DA. So really dangerous territory here.
Absolutely, and a lot of times it feels like these MAGA people are just little kids modeling behavior from their father, and when they see Donald Trump out there attacking people, calling out Judge Merchan's daughter, there was even a time a while back when Donald Trump was attacking the clerk sitting next to the judge, coming up with conspiracies about the clerk's love life, then of course they are going to model this behavior because, as I said before, they are very prone to violence, and we know that. My next question is about this intent piece, because we know the prosecution has all of this evidence. Donald Trump can't help but leave a paper trail every time he commits a crime. But as far as I'm aware, from my understanding, the hardest piece for the prosecution to prove in almost every trial is the mens rea, the state of mind. Did they intentionally commit this crime? And that's what ties it all together. So what type of strategies, what type of evidence do you think the prosecution has to prove this intent piece?
Well, they must have strong evidence, because I can tell you, prosecutors don't lose usually. Look at the statistics, especially in New York. They're fantastic, something like 90 plus, probably even 95 plus success rate of prosecution. And obviously on this specific case, you can sort of bet your bottom dollar the DA's office did not bring it without thinking they had a solid case. Obviously such an important case here. But I think the evidence could be anything from recordings that Michael Cohen made that we don't necessarily know what they are yet, emails, texts. Obviously, we're going to have testimony from pretty powerful witnesses, I'm guessing, Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. So I think we will see this play out in the trial. And obviously, all of that will come together to make clear that there was a plot here. And I think that's the overarching theme of this, right? This wasn't just the hush money case, as people call it. It's an election interference case, and that's a much bigger deal. And obviously, ultimately, at the end of the day, even zooming out from a non-legal perspective, the fraud that was perpetuated was on the American people because they didn't have this information in a critical election year. So I think the case will reveal, a lot of evidence showing Trump's intent.
I totally agree, and I have faith that the prosecutors are going to bring it home. But it's interesting how much this actually parallels the Nixon case, because Donald Trump and Richard Nixon both had the same end goal of influencing the results of an election, and they did that by paying hush money to people. Now, Nixon didn't pay hush money to porn stars, it was more to silence people about the whole Watergate break-in, but it is a very weird parallel. Now, my next question is about Donald Trump reportedly falling asleep in court. We have read that he rests his eyes for multiple minutes, he goes slack-jawed, and apparently he falls asleep. And what I said on the Don Lemon Show is it really reminds me of when I was in high school. I used to get a lot of detentions for being tardy all the time, and when you're in that detention setting, you have this juvenile urge to be more of a nuisance. So I would always have this urge to go on my phone or to fall asleep just to show them that I can be more of a nuisance, and I've grown out of that, of course, but it really doesn't seem like Donald Trump has. It seems like Donald Trump is still an absolute nuisance no matter what. So my question is, do you think Donald Trump will become increasingly unhinged as this trial goes on? Do you think he will have any courtroom outbursts? What are your predictions?
Yeah, I've been seeing they're calling him Don Snorleone, which is hilarious. But, whether it's his ability to even stay awake or to just be a regular defendant who's on their best behavior, he wouldn't even face the jury this week, which is, again, you are trying to win these people over to fight for your freedom in theory, right? I mean, he's way beyond showing any respect that a normal defendant would want to show the jurors. But I think you're absolutely right that we will probably see an increasingly unhinged, unraveling Trump as this trial goes on, especially, I think, as it becomes clearer and clearer that this case against him is incredibly strong. I mean, I think it's pretty clear to everyone else. It might not be clear yet to Donald Trump. I mean, he's pretty thick. So I do think we'll see these outbursts. And we've already seen, the DA has asked for a response to Trump potentially, and I think he has, violating his gag orders. And the fine, can be anything from a few $1,000s for, I think it's $1,000 per offense, and up to 30 days imprisonment or both. So definitely looking out to see what the response is there. And I think it will set the tone on, how in control of this case the judge is going to be. I think he's indicated that he plans to, treat Trump, they've given him a lot of exceptions so far, but now it's getting real. And now the judge really has been pushing back. And I think, maybe allowing some of that range has allowed him to crack down in a certain way. You have people, really on the progressive end saying, of course, Trump should get to go to his son's graduation. Of course, Trump should get all these leniencies. Other defendants aren't afforded those, even at times for funerals and, really major cases of personal hardship. But the reality is, I mean, you've committed several felonies that you're on trial for, right? I mean, it's not like he's gotten a parking ticket and is facing this consequence. Also, I mean, it's Donald Trump. So the idea that he cares so much about going to his son's graduation, I mean, there's no way he could tell you how old Barron Trump is right now. I guarantee you that. So I think more to come on all of this, but I do think the walls are closing in on Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Donald Trump seemed to be enraged by the fact that he has to be in a courtroom for every single day of this, but that's the way it works. That's the way it works for everybody. And this is something we talked about last time, but if any other defendant had done what Donald Trump is doing on Truth Social, does in his free time by attacking the judge, attacking the judge's daughter. There was a case where he attacked the clerk sitting next to the judge. He would relentlessly come up with conspiracies about these people, about who they're dating, about their love life. Any other defendant would have been punished immediately, but they give Donald Trump leniency for one reason or another. Maybe Donald Trump wants to become this victim/martyr, and they're trying to prevent that. But you touched on this a little bit. This is a good segue into my last question. Do you think, I don't want you to speculate too much, but what do you think the potential consequences could be? And do you think there's a chance that Judge Merchan actually enforces this contempt, not charge, but this idea of holding Donald Trump in contempt for attacking everybody in the court?
Absolutely. I think there's a possibility. And I think we've seen, sometimes Trump wants to test these limits. He wants to show that he is above the law. And a lot of the times he has been sort of given that deference. And I think the judge is really on his last nerve here, though. And we've seen that in some of the back and forth in the courtroom this week. So I absolutely think that he could be held in contempt if he continues this type of behavior.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how this trial plays out. I love hearing your insights. I'll have to have you on the show more and more as
Thank
this
you.
trial begins to ramp up. And Kaivan can be found in the description. He has an Instagram, he has a YouTube, he has a Twitter. I will link it all, so you guys should go check him out. Kaivan, have a great day, and thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.